I was like, what's the catalyst going to be, right? And then the inflation numbers came in on Wednesday, I guess lower than anticipated, and then that kind of set us off. That was the spark that lit the fuse, right? And we pumped to like 65, 66 after that news, and then today we took it from like 68 up until 7. We hit 70. I think we're chilling around 69 right now. So I think we got our catalyst, and I see runes is starting to pump some key runes. Ordinals still lagging right now, but I think that'll be the to cap off the cycle. But overall, a lot more bullish this week than last week. I would say the setup is looking really good.
Definitely echoing the sentiment. I think we were wondering what the catalyst was going to be. It seems like with Blur getting pushed back, or Blast, excuse me, people are really just fixating on this ETH ETF as like the big market sticking point. I do think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We saw something very similar with the Bitcoin ETF, right? It got a big pump up into the news, kind of sell the news event, as we see in a lot of these say stock driven, just because it's in the ETF world. But we could see a sell the news event as this run up goes, but it did cross some pretty notable thresholds. I know Jake is always talking on Wake and Jake as 67K being that sticking point for Bitcoin to hold to give us that next leg up and continue to rally. And as always, we're going to be looking to see past that when Bitcoin sells off, ordinals die off. We kind of got that pullback over the past month and a half. It seemed like ordinals kind of faded off a little bit. But with that, this time, Bitcoin for sure is sending here. So hopefully with that, ordinals will carry in tandem.
Yeah, ordinals are probably not down much when you think about it in terms of USD, but in terms of Bitcoin, it's certainly down. And I think a little bit different about the ETH EFT is that it was kind of like priced in to be rejected, and now I guess recent developments make it seem that it's more likely to be approved, which I don't think was factored in, and hence the 15% pump on ETH today. So yeah, I could definitely still see a sell the news event when the decision finally comes. But overall, it seems like the market has turned. I don't really see us going back down to 60 so suddenly. I think we're going to make a run for the all-time high right now.
Yeah, it definitely seems like this is the time. So we'll definitely see. And, I think the biggest thing I'm just looking at is volume returning. So it does seem like over the past 24 hours, we've had really good volume come back into puppets and node monkeys, which are, as always, two of the most notable collections. We've still yet to see that trickle down across the ordinals ecosystem. I feel like a few months ago, we were in a place where we just had a cascade of volume from the top collection to the lesser collections. It was just nonstop people speculating in ordinals, a ton of volume across the board. And let me just take a look at Magic Eden here to get a sense of the volume. Looks like the top volume in the past 24 hours is Node Monkeys with 11.77 Bitcoin. It's pretty good. I think a few days ago, it was down to maybe 3 Bitcoin a day. So that was pretty low. Now we're looking at close to $1 million just on the Node Monkey collection, and about $500,000 in the past day on puppets. This obviously seems like pretty significant volume when you compare it to stuff like meme coins. It's still very small, but hopefully that indicates that there's growth potential in the future. But it is just a question of, are we going to eventually see that money flow back into Bitcoin? Or sorry, back into ordinals, or is it going to be as Bitcoin runs, people want to have exposure into Bitcoin straight up as opposed to the NFT? That's where we're TBD. But I think it seems pretty pretty solid thesis that if Bitcoin continues to pump, you're definitely going to see some exposure to ordinals.
I mean, if you look at runes as well, Dog Go to the Moon is up 15% today, and it's traded almost 9 BTC on Magic Eden, and then you have RSIC up to 14 Sats. It's up 21%. Also about 11 Bitcoin in volume today on Magic Eden. So you're seeing the volume come back on runes. A lot of people were saying runes are dead, but the truth is, I think most of the inscriptions that are happening right now are rune attributed. So very much like the BRCs, when they were kind of dismissed and said they were dead, they kind of came back. I'm gonna see the same thing here. And you talk about Dog Go to the Moon is at $314 million market cap, RSIC at 203. Got pups lagging a bit. It did have a pump earlier this week, but it's back down to about 160 million as far as market cap goes. I think Runes is gonna like lead the way out. And then once those gains are I guess cashed in, we'll see even more volume on Ornos. But it's good to see good volume on the bigger collections at these lower prices. I think people are starting to dip their toes back onto the ordinals.
Yeah, completely agree with you there, Waf. And I mean, I'm right there with you. To be fully candid, I've been scaling out. Over the past few days, I actually sold most of my ordinals and instead am loading up on runes. We've talked about this plenty of times in the past few weeks, but I really see everything in terms of risk and reward. And you just look at runes being just so beaten down from the launch. And I don't really think they've ever had that fair launch catalyst or like a time where you can really consider it bullish, right? Like runes did really well for maybe a day or 2 days. I wouldn't even call it really well based on what that expectation was. Um, but I think runes as a whole is going to be a concept that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards, and it's going to be something that people want because we've seen the success of meme coins across multiple different chains. So I think it's very easy to make that comparison. I definitely do think ordinals are going to show a ton of strength. So by no means am I fighting ordinals. I think it's just totally as a comparison of what has the highest upside. My eyes are just glued on runes. I mean, like you said, the top collections are sub 300 mil market cap compared to some of the top meme coins on Solana and Ethereum in the billions, and Bitcoin, has a market cap of over $1 trillion. So we're just talking about the pure comps. It seems like runes have a ton of legs to run here, versus on ETH, which has the highest NFTs volume and market cap of collections we've seen. They have been dwindling over the past year. And again, it's not to fight anyone's back. I'm just making the comp here that NFTs haven't performed as well as altcoins and shitcoins this cycle. So I'm definitely starting to see myself getting a little bit more interested in runes.
I totally get that. I mean, the truth is, we were talking about how boring this market was last week, and that was just for Bitcoin, even. So, if Bitcoin is boring, then so is everything within its ecosystem. And now that we're getting a little bit more attention on Bitcoin, it just makes a lot of sense that it's going to flow down into its ecosystem. Runes being the most liquid and capable of switching hands makes so much sense to me. I've been looking at Dog Goat. I've been looking at the top ones. I've been looking at Dog Golden Moon. I've been looking at Arsic. I've been looking at Pups. I'm curious if you got others on your radar.
I mean, it's a tale as old as time with me. I'll always be bullish on Nat Cats. I'll always be bullish on Wizard. I will say the founder of Wizard, this guy Maven Spot, dude, he has been absolutely nothing but trouble for the community. So if you join the Discord over there on Magic Internet Money, the Bitcoin Wizard community, he's just like trolling his own community 24 times a day. He's like putting out timelines saying that Wizard's going to turn into Magic Internet Money in 2029. I definitely think he is trolling there, but he's just, I don't know what moment he's going to take to actually launch Magic Internet Money to Wizard holders, but it just seems so undervalued compared to those other market caps, right? I mean, I think the Magic Internet Money meme alone, in my mind, should be top five memes. So just at those other market caps you mentioned, 300 million for Dog Goes to the Moon. If Wizard is even half of that, it's still a 50% gain from where it's at right now. But I do think that these runes at their full peak, some of them are going to hit $1 billion. I for sure think Magic Internet Money has the potential to. A lot of it's just going to come down to how it's handled and what time they actually do make the conversion from Wizard to Magic Internet Money. But just with that risk reward and what's the possible downside, we're talking Wizard right now. I think is at a $90 million market cap, and that fully converts into Magic Internet Money. So I don't see how you wouldn't be buying Magic Internet Money at a $90 million market cap. I do think it's one of those trades where it's just a long time coming, right? We don't know exactly when the transition is going to happen, so people get bored of it. Their attention goes elsewhere. They want to free up liquidity. Totally understand all of those points, but at a $90 million market cap, I'm forced to be a buyer and a holder here. So that's the big one for me. I've just been accumulating that slowly, slowly, slowly as it goes down. I just keep buying more, but I'm pretty confident that the reckoning day will come and it'll see its time in this.
It's had a nice pump today. Actually, I was looking at it. It fell into the $3 handle, and it's back up to like 420, like 18% today. So I definitely see Wizard as being one of the better ones. You could use Maven's bots trolling as an opportunity to buy. I mean, people tend to overreact on everything, so it just makes a lot of sense to buy the FUD. I think when it comes to Wizards, I was I was earlier today. I was looking at some of the ordinals prices, and some of them I was a little bit in disbelief. I saw puppets at 0.169. I think that's literally, if not the bottom. I mean, we always talked about that 0.15 threshold. I think we're very close. OMB has dipped to about 0.31. I saw earlier today. I don't know if it's changed in the last few hours. Um, Also, Quantum Cats, same price as OMB. I think that's another one I was looking at. NatCat seems to be like a stable coin right now, just holding steady. And then just similar to the wizard play, the actual NFT, the Bitcoin wizard, I seen it down to 0.096. I mean, that was as high as zero point 0.3 just maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. So that's another one I was looking at too.
Yeah, 100% WAF. I mean, I think Bitcoin Wizards, even on its peak day, which was like right before the halving, got up to zero point 0.4. And Node Monkeys, at zero point 0.8 at one point. Everything has really come down a lot from its glory. And this is where, I'm going to be candid with the people listening. I definitely think as traders, it's best to always be reevaluating. And I'm just kind of trying to digest some of the sentiment I'm seeing online. And I don't think it's exclusive to ordinals. I think there's just a lot of sentiment shift around how do people feel about, the cartoon as an asset. And that's just to say we're placing a lot of value on these PFPs. It's all cyclical. I don't doubt that we're going to see NFTs go crazy once again at some point, or at least some faction of NFTs go crazy at some point. But I do think it is worth noting, we really are seeing CryptoPunks is the perfect thing I'd point to. Those are going down a ton, even in the midst of ETH running. Obviously, if you're following, Yuga and CryptoPunks tweeted out something today that made a lot of people pretty unhappy. They're basically shilling a derivative of punks. But that was like the blue chip of blue chips, just representing all NFTs. So to see that fading away and seeing a lot of the NFTs that we've, known and loved over the course of years, I don't know if the market's getting to a point where they're just like, hey, it's not 2021 anymore. We don't think these are going to be billion-dollar corporations. Why are we trading these assets? Um, I do always think that there's a possibility of that, or the market evolving past PFPs. So that was part of the onus as well for me to just say, hey, what do I really like within ordinals? I definitely think there's an upside there, but I'm going to be selling some of the stuff that I don't feel as good on. I know over the weekend, WAF, I messaged you about these chat fuckers. They came out about last week. They did decent. They had some pretty good volume. I bought a few, ended up selling them for a loss just because the volume wasn't there. And at this point, I'm just like, I want to thin out the portfolio, really go blue chip, really focusing on stuff like Quantum Cats, Node Monkeys, where it's just like the tried and true blue chips. But everything else, I'm still just like, I don't want to be over eager here on the Bitcoin pump, because we have seen a few times with ordinals, we just get the pump and then the sell off. So I really want to make sure that we got a nice firm footing here before we get bowled up and, pour our bags back into.
I agree with you. I don't think there's a rush on anything. People want to trade meme coins right now, and if runes are basically Bitcoin's meme coins, then I think that's where the action is going to be. So I would play it that way. I mean, when it comes to ordinals, I still have my bag of ordinals of different things that I plan on holding, but I'm not like actively looking to add more at the moment. So totally agree with what you're saying. Don't think there's a rush to do anything. And like you said, we've seen sort of like these false starts in the market before, where we have a big green day, and then just over the next couple of days, we've seen the whole like rally just fizzle out. So I'm not ready to call it a rally yet on runes or ordinals or anything like that. I mean, clearly Bitcoin is the igniter and the indicator. So if Bitcoin kind of continues moving up and we're over 70, and I guess like solidly over 70 and like rising, then I think it creates that wealth effect, and then people will be more willing to buy ordinals and runes and all that stuff. So I think we just need Bitcoin to kind of confirm the breakout first.
Yeah, 100% there, Waf. I mean, I think you said it really well with we've seen the false starts, and I think this is exactly that. I definitely think it's going to be a matter of what are the catalysts and where the money's coming from. I definitely think it made more sense to me when we had Blast as that catalyst because it was like, okay, everyone's going to get their airdrop. You have a big stimulus going around. People are going to have that money. They're going to be excited. Maybe they're fatigued from farming and they want to celebrate. If you get thousands of dollars airdrop to you, it's fun to buy some stuff. So I definitely thought that was going to be the catalyst of like, ooh, let's buy these ordinals that are down. Seemed like the perfect plan, but now we're back in waiting. So the catalyst could very well be the ETH ETF news with ETH shooting up. But as always, you still need that money to come from somewhere. So I think that's just the big question before people get too excited. Like, yeah, there's definitely some sales going on today in some popular collections, but just look at those floors. I think we're still going to see a lot more floor thinning before everything ignites. It could come across as a whale just going and sweeping 50 assets at once. That can always clear a floor pretty quickly. But just looking at the floors on collections like puppets, they definitely have bricked a little bit over the couple of weeks. Not in a bad way where the price is like down anything disastrous or crazy, but you do see a lot of consolidations in between price rungs. It's not like one sale at 0.19, then one at 0.22. It's kind of okay, there's 5 or 6 sales that need to happen in the 0.17 range to push us to 0.18, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the floors have definitely been thickening. There's one thing you mentioned earlier I wanted to touch upon is CryptoPunks. I guess like there was FUD today because of that new collection. I guess like a 500 collection of some other punk or what, I forgot the name, but the fact that it's associated with CryptoPunks, it's like sort of diluting the brand and and sort of like that provenance, and that's why I like NAT. I love non-arbitrary tokens. I love DMT because these things live on Bitcoin forever, regardless of its founder or who created it, and it just kind of lives on forever without needing someone to direct it. So I think that's definitely going to be the future of PFPs and ordinals, is DMT NATs.
Yeah, completely agree with you there, Waf. I mean, it's you and I had the pleasure of sitting down and speaking with the founder of NatCats a few months ago, Yvonne Bit, and I mean, he's just a very humble guy. For him, he just said, "My purpose was to set this up. I'm pretty much going to walk away from the project, but not walking away without its having its place in the world." He's like, "I'm basically giving this project over to Bitcoin, which is how it should be," and it was just a really refreshing conversation, if you remember that. And it was pretty cool too. We got the block runners up there and everything, but it was just nice hearing him talking about art and innovation and letting the art speak for itself. But 100%, when you're looking at these collections and just trying to see where projects can sort of establish a narrative or establish a hold of why people might buy them in the future, I think NatCats just does that so beautifully, where it's all curated by Bitcoin, it's all on chain, the first collection to do the non-arbitrary traits. Whether more and more collections will adopt that in the future, we'll definitely see where stuff like Royals can come out and be traded on Magic Eden. We'll see how that collection holds up. But yeah, I definitely think from a risk reward perspective, as we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, there's just nothing like NatCats. I think it's a beautifully sized collection. I think the art is cool. I think the whole narrative is just a home run IMO. Surprised these prices are staying down at these levels, but that's irrespective of my, or sorry, it's irrelevant of my perspective. How I feel about the matter doesn't change what the price action's at, but I do think they are one to keep an eye on for the future.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, as an investor first and a collector like last, I don't want to be rugged or have like the actions of a particular project head or leader or founder affect my investment. So I think that risk is definitely reduced when it comes to DMT, or you're just better off like holding Bitcoin if that risk is too great anywhere else, right? So I think I'm like, if you're holding like a significant amount of your wealth or a significant amount of an investment in a project, you really need to like think about that risk, right? So I think if it could happen to CryptoPunks, it could happen to anything, and I think that risk is real. And that same thing could apply to the projects that we always talk about that we're very bullish on, whether it's node monkeys, Bitcoin puppets, quantum cats, right? One bad news story about something, and next thing you know, the project could sell off. You never know. I did hear like some, I want to say like negative things about the Tiny Vikings creator this past week too. So I mean, like, not that that was like a great collection or anything, but like if you all it takes is an accusation or two against the founder, and a collection could go to zero. So I think for my mindset, I want to be able to reduce my risk pretty much in everything I hold.
Yeah, well said there, Waf. And I mean, I think that's just something that is always a risk when we're trading anything in crypto, and it's just like the risk comes to light more often when we're not looking for it. When everyone's making money and we're all printing, and rewind a few months ago when everyone's bowled up on ordinals. Of course, we're bowled up on ordinals. There's really no risk when the entire ecosystem just has a ton of buyers lined up, and any project that comes out, you buy, you make a stack of Bitcoin. It was very reminiscent of 2021 where we were all trading NFTs and making money off it. If you weren't around back then, first time still making a lot of money. It's really easy to lose sight of that risk. But I think once the dust settles a little bit and the music doesn't fully stop, but maybe they're changing the tunes, right? And it's like, there's some people here who really don't know how to dance, and maybe they shouldn't be on the dance floor. So I think we've sort of seen that with ordinals and these projects. Just as the space continues to mature, some of that value gets priced in. Okay, like we're a few months here, there was definitely that huge ordinals thesis, and it paid off massively, right? I think there was multiple people here in MVHQ who printed enormously. They were just super early on to ordinals, getting some of those sub 10K collections, inscribed early on, minted, be it puppets or node monkeys, whatever it is. But you're looking at the prices now, it's definitely easy to understand, like, okay, they've fallen a lot. So the instinctive nature is just, I want to buy here, I want to catch the knife. But there are still people out there who made, 10,000%, and I got in basically for free off mint. So I think it's normal that this is happening. It's normal that some ordinals collections are phasing out. But to your point, that risk is always there. It's always possible that a creator tanks their own project or does something that's just not savory. And that's one of the added elements to trading NFTs versus other, elements in the space, where you do have to worry about sort of that project lead and what they're up to.
Yeah, totally agree. Having said that, though, in the past week, I did mint my royal, and I did notice that you bought an additional Nat Cat, and I'm wondering what do you have your eye on for this week? Is it just runes, or is there any collections you're just continuing to monitor for an entry? I have some on my list. I was just curious to see what you had on your list.
Sure. So yeah, I did buy another Nat Cat. I think I mentioned at the end of our episode, I'm like, I'm almost definitely going to be buying a Nat Cat. And then someone listed a tricolor head on the floor, and I just really like collecting those. I think they're super fun. And to your point earlier, we're definitely investors before collectors. But with Nat Cats, I like, because the floor is so condensed and consolidated. Like, you can find some pretty rare ones at the floor. And in previous episodes, we've talked about that. I think when the floors are smushed together and the price is down, that's like the best place to go shopping for rares. Puppets too. There's people just listing crazy grails for at the floor over the past week, if you're looking and if you're quick. But yeah, with Nat Cats, I definitely think if they return to where they were and ever go back to like a point 0.1 floor, some of these rares I think are just going to pay dividends. So was happy to pick up the tricolor head. But yeah, this is going to be controversial. It might spark a little bit of FUD in the chat, or at least some hate for part of the co-host team here. But I did sell my last puppet today, actually. Was pretty sad to see it go. But just going back to what we talked about with founders, I'm just like not feeling as bullish on the community as I did. And I welcome any response from any audience member if you want to talk about it. If you have a puppet, I love the puppets and I like the community a lot. But just looking at it from an outside perspective, I just don't really know where it goes. It just seems like the founder is a little too unaware. I think he's like a beast and a very cool guy just for making puppets, but he makes it very clear and very apparent pretty often that he's like surprised by this level of success, and is just constantly being like, why are they worth this? Are people mad? Like, are people upset with this price action? So it's not exactly the kind of founder I want to see. So I spent a lot of time over this weekend listing it, delisting it, listing it, delisting it, and eventually it was just like, I want to ride this Bitcoin train. As much as I do believe in the puppets, it's up from my entry. So I just wanted to extract liquidity and move on to the next risk reward. So I'm pretty much only focused on Nat Cats and looking to get an entry into Quantum Cats. I think Cat Summer is what I'm going to brand it here. But I mean, those collections, Quantum Cats specifically, have just held so beautifully through all of this turmoil that I can't help but be bullish. We obviously have Taproot Wizards coming in the future. I think Udi and his crowd of Bitcoin OGs are just going to be a force to be reckoned with. So I'm really just trying to consolidate my chips on what has the most strength. And again, it's no shade on puppets. Like I love them. I'll probably look to buy another one at the floor if it does continue to dip. But I did want to be candid with that, just as someone who's trading these spaces and navigating. I never thought I'd sell the final puppet, but here we are.
Well, I mean, sometimes you got to make the decision for yourself. I feel like one thing I like to say is you buy when you make money when you buy, not necessarily when you sell. And then the second thing I like to say is like you got to know when to cut your losses. So I think between the two of those things, you probably concluded to yourself that selling was the right move. So just congrats on the additional Bitcoin. I want to say I've been looking at like some rares on NatCats for pretty much for the past week, and the one that and you had brought this up last week, and the ones that I was like having my eye on was the alien fish. I was just looking at that floor. I mean, if you go to the NatCats on Magic Eden, the alien floor is at 0.165 BTC, which is pricey considering the floor is 0.027 on the collection. But it goes from 0.165 to 0.166 to 0.28 to 1.95. So I just think there's a huge opportunity to just hold one of those and just wait on it right there. I mean, you get a couple of sales, and this thing is at least 3 to 5x to maybe even 10x the price with a few additional sales. I'm sure others will come in to sell once one of these sell, but there's only about 15 or 16 of them, so not that many could actually happen. So that was one of the ones I was looking at. This one I'm gonna throw you probably a little bit of a curveball. Like I was looking at Ordinals that still is a play on runes, and I came to this conclusion. I think Arsic Ordinals at 0.022 is a buy, and the reason why I say that is because it's still farming season 2, so there's a rune allocation to these ordinals, but they've been sold off like other ordinals as if there's nothing coming to them. So I think R6 at 0.022 could be a good buy zone to me.
It definitely did surprise me, Mav. I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, Arsic really started a big pool of wealth for a lot of people. I mean, they were airdropped to a lot of early holders. I think those went up to 0.1. I remember, having a puppet at the time and got airdropped in Arsic and I think sold it for a decent chunk of change. And it also really led the narrative into runes, right? I mean, obviously runes didn't play off exactly how we wanted them to. But I do think that they have been the ones to consistently do it right every single time. They've been innovating. They started the mining narrative. There was lots of other projects that followed suit, and they've yet to make a bad move. They've pretty much just been building in silence, operating, and under promising and then over delivering every single time. So I think it's a really solid team to be betting on. As we mentioned, founders and builders. I definitely think they're ones who are doing it right. It seems like there's a lot of narrative left in the game. The only possible downside I would see with RSIC is just maybe supply dilution. I know they said that there's going to be farming for airdrop 2 or whatever that mechanic is going to look like from them. They haven't announced it yet. So maybe there's some concern that, RSIC's going to overproduce, but that's pretty much it. And I'm sure just based on everything they've shown us so far that they're going to handle that tactfully and they're considering all of these possible variables. But I like the play honestly a lot, Waf. I definitely think they're down quite a bit from where they are. So especially as we're talking about runes potentially leading us out of the hole that they've gone into, it's definitely a good one to keep your eye on.
Yeah, and the other one I wanted to ask you about because I know you were bullish on it was Blob. Are you still holding Blob, or is that one of the ones that you are consolidating out of?
No, I sold it, unfortunately. I think I made a tweet. I was just like, I mean, I actually made the tweet because there was some news out of Iran where the president died in a helicopter crash, and it turned out to just be an accident. So it was not an add-on war threat. But in the event that it was a war threat, I was just like, I'm just going to get out of here because we've seen how rocky things can get, especially if this was going to be like a bigger catalyst than it was. I thought things could have gotten pretty rocky. So that was pretty much just like, hey, I'm going to cut my losses here. Did decent on Ordinal. So I'm pretty much sidelined for right now, minus my Nat Cats in Wizard, but definitely looking for entries. And I'm just looking for volume at this point. I do think blobs are a great one. I think anything that's like top 10 on Magic Eden for Ordinals is a really strong contender. Most things are down like over 50%. So, blobs had a peak of about zero point 0.1. I definitely think there's a decent opportunity for a double up there. They have pretty notable holders and investors in the blob space. We did a Forbes AMA the other day, and one of the people leading the Forbes Web3 team reps that as her PFP. Not that that means anything, but you just see that there's more and more people who are excited about ordinals. And I don't think we've talked about this, WAF, but I've heard that major exchanges like Kraken and Binance are really working to get ordinals onboarded onto their platform. So I think that could be a major catalyst we haven't really talked about. But if that's the case, I do think any of these ordinal collections that are down over 50% would make excellent trades because anything that's down 50% could easily rebound 100% pretty quickly.
Yeah, especially when we talk about this volume at being like under $1 million, like all it takes is like $1 million to come into it, and the floor might like double. So, these collections are all micro caps at the end of the day. I mean, they really are. I mean, you're talking about Node Monkeys. The volume for the day is number one. It's at 12.3 Bitcoin. So it's not really a lot in the grand scheme of things. So it wouldn't really take that much money to move these floors, which is a good thing. It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. I think when the floor is going down, it's always a bad thing having no volume. But I just don't know how much left there is to sell off. Honestly, I think if we're not at the bottom, we're like around the bottom, we're floating at the bottom. So sometimes I like to basically hold off from from selling when my emotion is to sell. Like I like to counter trade myself. So if I'm really feeling the desire and need to sell, I feel like that could be the bottom, and I've been fighting that itch a little bit the last couple of weeks. I really feel, even though I'm not in a rush to go in and buy more stuff, I'm also not in a rush to sell. I've been just trying to fight that feeling.
Yeah, dude, props to you there, WAF. And I really was trying to fight it for a long time. I was like, I'm gonna like I said, like it didn't bring me any joy to sell the puppet. I was sort of happy to just be off the roller coaster for a little bit just to regain my thoughts because I realized I was just spread too thin across too many things and just really wanted a chance to look at, my objective as a trader, which should always just be making the best trades and risking the least amount to make the most amount of money. But I'm with you, dude. There's like so many urges that just scream as a trader when things go down. Like it's time to sell. It's time to sell. And in Web3, above all else, we've seen time and time again, like when we think the top is in is so much different from when retail thinks the top is in. And maybe it's different this time around. Maybe there's not as much retail interference. Maybe it's not VCs coming in, but in my mind, I think they do. I don't really see a situation where we have ordinals at this low volume forever. I think once it gets loaded on exchanges and you have ETH ETFs coming out and Bitcoin ETFs coming out, you're going to see more and more savvy investors looking for, well, what's the next beta play here? What's the next adjacent derivative I can get my hand on? Not a derivative in the sense of like Azuki and Kidzuki, but derivative of like stock to option, right? So if you're trying to get exposure to Bitcoin and you're thinking, hey, what asset class can I get a super fast return on? Ordinals are super appealing. There's just such low supply. It's so significant in the history of Bitcoin that I could really see a situation where you have a ton of big funds pour in a lot of cash very quickly. So I'm with you there, WAF, and I'm sure it's going to pay off well for you to fight the feeling. And I hope, hopefully our bags live to see another day.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting on the Binance listings for runes. I think that's going to come soon too, and that'll also be another trigger and another igniter of the space. We'll see which one gets listed first. It seems like RSIC has all the connections. It wouldn't surprise me if RSIC is the first one to be listed on Binance. I think Dog Go to the Moon just seems to be like a really good leading indicator of all runes. So if Dog Go to the Moon does well, then all the other runes should also follow, I believe. So like that one also wouldn't surprise me if it hits Binance. So it's just gonna, and it just really comes down to the mania. Like, are we in the bull? Did the bull market really start? Are we gonna cross 73 in the next week or so? And if that happens, then I think game on for everything. I think you'll see altcoins and BRC20s and runes and everything just really start ticking up. So really, at the end of the day, I think it still does come down to what Bitcoin is going to do first, and then the market's going to follow its lead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you there, Waf. And I think the biggest thing is it's just going to be an interesting relationship as Bitcoin accelerates with the ordinal pricing. Because to your point, most of these ordinals are still going up in terms of US dollars. It's just a matter of like if you bought something for zero point 0.3 Bitcoin, you certainly don't want it to stay at zero point 0.3 Bitcoin in the price. Well, sorry, you don't want the price to go down in Bitcoin. So I think that's the biggest risk is like if Bitcoin just shot overnight to 200K, would our ordinals also be going up in relative terms? As long as it's staying the same or going up, we're great. But we just don't want to have a situation where ordinals are cruising or Bitcoin is cruising, but ordinals are just staying put in US dollar terms and not moving with Bitcoin. So that'd be bad. But I think there's going to be a balance there. And if you just get enough momentum going into Bitcoin, then for sure, some of that's inevitably going to spill over into ordinals.
That's like bad for holders, but it's actually good for new buyers and newcomers, right? Because now they're coming in with a more expensive Bitcoin, right? And they're buying a cheaper ordinal, right? So I think that's sort of like the ordinals changing hands and going into like a more diamond-handed person, or at that moment anyway. And just sometimes there needs to be a reshuffling of the deck, and I think a lot of times, if you're in a collection and you wrote it from 0.01 to 0.2, it's time to let it go sometimes. Whereas like the person who is waiting on it, watch it then go down from 0.4 to 0.2, maybe that's like their entry price. So I think it's just really sort of like just a changing of the hands on the collections, people getting out and people getting in, and like getting their target price for entry and getting their target price for exiting to move on to the next, their next move, which makes a lot of sense to me because it's hard to literally just hold forever, right? You can't hold forever. I think eventually you have to sell. And no one ever really times the pico top of when to sell, but when you're up like 2,000%, 20x or whatever, and you might have missed a 40x, but you got a 20x. I mean, like no one's going to complain about that at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to complain for a fraction of that, but for sure, I think the marks are aimed pretty high here. I was doing some calculations in the background just to give us a sense of some comps on other chains. Just looking at ETH NFTs. So right now, Bored Apes are at a floor of let me take a look here actually. Pudgy Penguins there. So Pudgies and Bored Apes are both at a market cap of a little over 350 million. Punks are at a $1.1 billion market cap. And this is just accounting for floor, right? Like obviously in Punks and Apes, there's going to be some grails that might inflate that number a little bit. There might be stuff that's not selling that might deflate it. But just looking at the floor price and multiplying that out by supply, Mutant Apes a little under 200 million. So I think there's decent comps there to be had. It certainly seems like Pudgies are really the premier NFT collection in ETH. At least they have been over the past couple of months and year. So that sitting at about a 300 million, I think, is a pretty good benchmark for just these other collections over on Magic Eden. Looking at Node Monkeys, $186 million market cap. Definitely, if we get a Bitcoin summer and if Bitcoin continues to rip, you have really high floor potential or ceiling on these collections. Same thing with Bitcoin puppets. I mean, it could go as high as a triple up just to be one of those top collections. And then, again, I can't get away from Quantum Cats. Only a 73 million market cap. It's held so strong through these dips. It just does seem like, as a whole, these collections have a lot of upside just looking at them from a market cap perspective. So I think it's just a matter of time. Again, we never really know. Things could go lower. It's the old adage of like, don't try to catch a falling knife. You really never know when exactly that's going to be. But I'm sure at some point we will get some catalyst that'll move the needle a little bit.
Remy dropped an analysis like last week, I believe, in the Ordinals thread, and he was just tracking the price of BRC20s and sort of like the whole ordinal market last year versus this year. So if it plays out very similar, I would expect like a more down market until the end of the year, and then where we see like another rip like in Q4. So this could be like an accumulation phase, and it could be like a longer accumulation phase. And same thing could happen for Runes, although it seems like Runes wants to run now. It's all speculation. I mean, obviously Bitcoin price goes. I can't see how Ordinals and Runes stay low if the Bitcoin price really rips to like 75, 80, 90. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there's so many different ways it could play out. I think just having a little skin in the game and monitoring is always like the best, I guess, game plan to kind of be able to quickly adapt to how the scenarios unfold. And that's how I'm playing it. I do think like if we don't rip in the summertime, we're gonna rip in the end of the year. So I think that I'm just playing it at like as those two scenarios. And I think it's gonna rip, like it's gonna melt faces rip. Like I think it's gonna be a huge rip because, to your point, like these are really low market caps, and it's not gonna take a lot of money for these things to explode in price. So I could see, that we always talk about one Bitcoin floor for Node Monkeys. I still firmly believe that. So right now it's on sale for 4 for 1, pretty much. Node Monkeys, right? Bitcoin puppets 0.175. I mean, we saw these like almost at a half a Bitcoin. Wouldn't surprise me to see that back there by the end of the year. Same thing with Quantum Cats. I mean, all we need is that Taproot Wizards announcement, and that could really take off. So these things are all just sitting there waiting for its narrative and its bull case. And people are just a little bit trigger shy. That's all.
Yeah, well said. We also have a possible question here from Dop Daddy himself, Mr. Jacob. Jacob, you got a question for us?
Yo, yeah, I think the comparisons or the comps you're making for blockchain to blockchain, collection to collection, I think they're fair and something to look at. But I guess, do you ever factor in like the difficulty level of Bitcoin, or just like the noobishness of most people? Where I know we all remember how crazy the node stuff was when we tried to do that, but just even in general, like using Bitcoin, figuring out which wallet you're going to use, understanding how there's like 4 different addresses to one, and like which to send where and what sites to use. Like I think Magic Eden's done miracles for making it more usable. But like, do you guys take that in consideration at all, where it's like Bitcoin's just like newer and like harder to use than a lot of the other blockchains so far?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jacob. And I mean, I think we've talked about that in some previous episodes, specifically around runes, because I think they're a little bit more difficult to understand than other assets in just terms of how you buy them and sell them. To your point, I think Magic Eden has made strides. And I think it's always under the assumption that, we're very early to the space. Punk6529 actually put out a great thread the other day. I'll try to find that after I'm done, giving my spiel, and can hear WAF's thoughts on this. But he pretty much just said, there's a curve for all of this stuff. And something he was realizing is that not every single person out there is going to be someone who's going to try ordinals. He made it akin to like when we were evolving as a species, there had to be that weird person who was like, let me try to eat this plant and see if it's edible or safe or not. And that's us, right? As crypto traders, we're very prone to risk. We take that on. We're not as wary of it. So by being that kind of like people who want to take on that risk were willing to do this work and learn out more about these kind of asset classes that exist. I think over time, once it's proven to be safe and it's proven that people have made money, inevitably more people will follow. But there's always going to be some hesitance and some reluctance to people onboarding. So a long-winded answer, but I definitely think yes, it is going to take some time. But I think eventually, once proven safe, more people will bridge over. Not everybody, but I think once the barriers to entry are a little bit more known and routed, we will see less friction.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would answer that as like I look to the centralized exchange listings to like help and assist with that. But also sometimes I think we probably can't see the forest through the trees, right? Like someone like myself, I don't really think about that from a day-to-day perspective. So it is like an interesting insight to like hear, oh yeah, the barrier of entry is really hard for like normies, or not even just normies, even for people in the crypto space. Like Bitcoin's still a little bit more difficult to understand. Um, I don't necessarily always factor that into my thought process, and it's probably something that I need to do and I should do. I always look to like again, I always look to like centralized exchanges to making it listing it and making it easier for people to get in.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And yeah, just because like a lot of my friends who trade Solana shitcoins or are mainly ETH or whatever, uh, have never really even ventured into Bitcoin. They kind of know what it is just from me talking about it, but they don't really know anything about ordinals or inscriptions or definitely not runes. So I think that's just my hesitancy is like um, with ETH, we saw that DeFi was the first thing that came, DeFi summer. Everyone got educated on DeFi and, farmed the fuck ton and did all of the value there. And that's kind of where it stayed. And then they didn't really understand NFTs. And then NFTs became more like tokens and that kind of lowered the barrier to entry. And then people got a little more interested. So yeah, I just think it's interesting to think about like those kind of limiting factors where like, if you do understand that you're in the ecosystem and know how to trade it, then it makes sense and it's obvious. But from an outside looking in, there's just like that education piece that I feel like it's missing.
Yeah, I mean, it really does seem like we need to like educate people better on like how to use things and what are the differences between like your ordinals address and your Bitcoin address, and even like if you want to take it to SRC20s and your stamps. I mean, there's like so many things on Bitcoin. It is definitely overcomplicated and it's not easy to use. It's definitely something that needs to be factored into like when you're in it, because now again you might be limited from like a liquidity perspective to only people who also are familiar with that ecosystem, and you're not going to see the widespread adoption on it and the volume on it that you see in the Solana world or the Ethereum world. Side note, what's up with DOP? Anything? I don't even think I got
Bro,
my
they're supposed to be launching this week. I think they made a tweet said the mainnet's coming this week. So it's let's keep the green candles up.
All right, let's go. Looks
Smells like DOP.
Oh, is Scott? Are you referring to my DOP question? Is that what you're saying in chat?
I was wondering that too. DOP kind of popped out of nowhere. Jacob was their poster child, so Mavs going as far as they have. It's been a good week for the DOP daddy himself. It seems like.
Let's go Mavs.
Can't complain.
My Knicks got eliminated.
Same here, WAF. Also was rooting for the Knicks. Bummer to see it.
Yeah, that was definitely a bummer.
Time, but hey, they did better than I thought. But circling back, if anyone else in the audience has any questions or just wants to chime in, if you're a longtime listener of the BossDawgs show and just want a chance to chat with WAF and I definitely welcome it. It's always just fun to have a forum and just gauge how we're feeling sentiment week to week. So would really love to hear from some of you guys who have traded ordinals, maybe bought near the top, had things fall down. Maybe you're still riding high from early on, but just kind of curious how you guys are reading all this. Obviously very exciting for Bitcoin to be ripping, but just kind of curious how you guys are feeling, with your own collections. If you have anything you want us to take a look at, we're happy to weigh in. While we're waiting for some potential viewers, WAF, I just saw Flanor said Lassa Gets are migrating to ordinals, confirmed by Mr. Bull on for Monday. Did not know that that was happening, but that is the founder of Puppets, his first collection. It's on ETH. They're these they're pretty funny little dudes. I think they're pretty cool. But migrating to ordinals on Monday. Any thoughts on that?
Ah, that's very bullish. I think the price the last time I've looked at it, and I don't know what it is now, was around 0.65 ETH. That's his first collection. That going over and getting migrated to Bitcoin is I think it's a bullish factor. I'm not sure if that a 10,000 collection or is that a smaller collection. Do you know?
I am going to find out for us right now, but I'm not positive. Not positive off the top of my head. Let's see. It is 7,777. I also remember seeing them at zero point 0.6. They are now trading at about zero point 0.4, which makes sense. Puppets are down a little bit since they were at the peak. But yeah, they're holding pretty well. They're at zero point 0.4 ETH, even with ETH ripping. So yeah, I definitely think them migrating over to ordinals is pretty cool. I think more collections that we see moving over to ordinals, the better. Also, holy shit, ETH just won't stop. I know I promised we weren't going to talk about ETH during this. That I just got a notification that it passed 3,600. Looks like it's down a couple bucks since then. But I mean, holy shit, just a crazy day today.
So I was just kind of doing a ETH calculation and conversion to Bitcoin. So Lassa get at 0.41 is equivalent to like a 0.02 on Bitcoin. So at 0.02 could be a nice play. I mean, if it's his original collection and the puppets are sitting at 0.175, one or 18, whatever it is, you know what? 0.02 seems like a really good play to me for on the Lasso gets.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point there, Raf. I mean, honestly, it's a smaller collection than puppets. Puppets are at 10,000. And yeah, those are, 0.18 basically, 0.175. That's a pretty good comp there. I do think, brings the questions. I know that now we have Opium, we got Puppets, we got Lassagets. If they're all in the same ecosystem, something's going to have to be the bottom tier collection into there. So it does seem like with 7,000, it might be. I mean, Opium's still a pretty high floor itself, but yeah, I definitely think you're right. At that math, I think it could go, a little bit higher. So it could be a front run kind of play. It might be worth picking one up on ETH before it migrates over.
Yeah, it could be a good low risk play. I mean, Bitcoin puppets, I think just from the sheer volume, its all time volume will always be pretty significant. I mean, it's got like 2.2K Bitcoin total volume traded. That's pretty insane if you ask me.
You're saying on Lassagets, that's the volume?
No, on the puppets, the total volume is like 2.2K Bitcoin total volume traded on Bitcoin puppets.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, dude, that is absolute insanity there. We got a question from Scott Co here. He's asking, what do we think of Circle in 7 days? It is not ordinals related, but I'm happy to answer it. Yeah, Circle Tech finishing up its first season after 7 days. I think it's definitely, bullish. I definitely think Circle Tech went pretty under farmed, just given how easy it was to rise up in the leaderboard. I know a ton of our MVHQers are top 100, if not top 50, maybe even better than that. I think Scotco's number one. I, haven't really been on there a whole bunch, but I'm still top 30, so happy with that. Yeah, I definitely think we're hoping it's one of those airdrops that's just the fewer people that are doing it, the oversized payout, and hopefully that can give a little stimmy to some of those users and bleed into other ecosystems. It does seem a little overshadowed by Blast, but that could be a good thing, honestly. I think the fact that it's happening with Blast still ongoing, maybe there's a little bit more attention that'll go to it if people are just burned out and fatigued. Good to see it the other way around. Maybe if people had a bigger airdrop from Blast the first time, maybe the other airdrops would have followed suit and done a little bit better. But it's certainly exciting. Definitely, any stimulus or airdrops at this point, we'll definitely take it.
Yeah, totally agree. These under farmed areas is where it's really at the end of the day, because you get a bigger slice of the pie if you're farming something that's less farmed.
100%. And I mean, I'm going to give a shout out to Jake here because I know he's talked before that one of his strengths in crypto is just having conviction. And I think in terms of something going under farmed, be it airdrop farming or in terms of just where you're spending your time, I think it's just a matter of having conviction to see it through when other people aren't seeing it through. And can't help but feel like we're probably in one of those pockets right now with ordinals WAF. I mean, we've just seen the different ebbs and flows. We found ordinals when people were focused on Solana. Some people even before that. I mean, I was late to ordinals, all things considered, but was still super early in terms of just seeing when volume first poured in. And here we are now. We've gone through the Pico top or local top. Things have cooled off a little bit, but while people are clacking away working on Blast or Blur or Circle or whatever else, it seems like a lot of attention has left ordinals. So just honing back in that spirit of conviction. I do think that people who have conviction in ordinals and are staying true to that hypothesis and are just staying locked in and really focusing on what's happening and understanding the space inside and out. I mean, there's for sure that's how you make it big in crypto.
When the ordinal run first happened again, like in October, November of 2023, I remember the Solana chat. I just couldn't even keep up with it. It was just like out of control. Like the threads were just so long. If you missed like a couple hours, if you were away for a couple hours, came back, you had so much chat to catch up to. And now if I go to our Solana thread, like there's really like not much going on there. So and I view ordinals kind of like very similar now. It's just an attention game right now, and right now the attention's off. And you kind of get bored, and you move on to something else. I think right now, like if you look at and I think MVHQ subthreads are great indicators of this, right? You go to Blur Blast, we got a lot of volume and action going on there. And we got a lot of volume and action going on in DFS Rainmakers, but that's also like almost Blast related as well. I mean, not 100%, but a lot of it is too. So it just goes to show you there's only enough attention for like a couple of things, and the others kind of go by the wayside until the cycle comes back around and they're back to being hot. So at the end of the day, attention is like the number one thing you need in the space. So I think if you have conviction on something, you just wait till the attention to come back onto it, and then you can profit and maximize what you're holding, what you're getting into just by playing the attention game.
Yeah, well said, WAF. I think that's absolutely the case. Speaking of attention, I know earlier I mentioned some stuff that I had my eyes on, pretty much the same, but did you have a chance to go through what's been, catching your eyes? If you had, let's say, 0.5 Bitcoin to deploy right now, if you were to pull the trigger, what would you be looking at?
What was that number? How much to deploy?
Let's say 0.5, but if there's any other collection where you're like, it's over 0.5 or anything, I'm just super curious where you've been focusing.
All right, 0.5. If I had to like divvy it up by like a tier 1 and a couple of mid tiers, I think the number one purchase I would make right now with 0.5 is a Quantum Cat. I think I would want to lock down a Quantum Cat because I feel like they still have news ahead of them, and I think they still have sort of like the attention game coming with Taproot Wizard. So to me, Quantum Cat at 0.31 makes a lot more sense than OMBs or Node Monkeys. If I had to like put those three in like one tier, I think Quantum Cats would be my number one right now. Next on the list, I would say this is interesting. I think I'd probably only need the 0.3. I probably don't need the 0.5. But if I had to spend the other 0.2, would I buy a Bitcoin puppet over some Nat Cats? Probably not. I'd probably buy a couple of Nat Cats. Pizza Ninjas has come down under 0.1 now. That might be interesting if it could fall down a little bit further. I think I try and catch that at 0.05. So I'd be looking for like another 50% drawdown on ninjas. And then I did mention R6 at 0.02. I think I like R6. I'd probably buy maybe 4 or 5 of those for like 0.1. And then if I have another 0.1 to play with, I might buy some Rune Pups there. I might buy like 2 of those, get the play on the runes as well, and get some exposure to the ordinal before it migrates, and just wait for a pump. It might be easier to sell the ordinal than the rune. If I want to sell a chunk. So that's probably what I'd be looking at. So I think Quantum Cats, Arsic, Rune Pups. I'd be watching and monitoring ninjas. Yeah, that's about what I'm looking at right now.
Nice, Wef. Yeah, I think that's a really solid allocation there. I totally agree with you, dude. I think it's just inevitable. Quantum Cats, Cough Drop, one of our beloved members, was just super bullish out the gate. I think it's still super bullish now. They're down pretty much from their peak, but not too much. They're still pretty close. I think their peak's like 0.44. They're pulled back to 0.31 was the low of their sell off that we've had over the past couple of months. So they're still holding up phenomenally well. And I would just imagine it's a really small collection. So I think the ability for the floors to get thinned out on that definitely surpasses the other collections that are in the top 10 or top 20, whatever. They can really easily cook. And you have the benefit where usually with the small collection, there's just a risk that no one's paying attention to it and it kind of gets lost in the weeds. But totally with that upcoming news of Taproot at some point in the future, it's just a collection that people aren't going to let the floor on that get too low, right? Like at a certain point, it ever gets below mint, I mean, it's just not going to get below mint, right? Like it's always going to be free at that point. So I think it's just a collection that has a really solid floor baked into it. Yeah, I'm right there with you.